Welcome to AmA Media.
So sit back, relax, kick your feet up, and most of all enjoy. Much love.
Corpse roads, also known as coffin roads, LYCH ways, or burial paths, are historic routes traditionally used to transport the deceased from their homes, or sometimes from the outlying villages, to a church with burial rites. These paths were commonly used in medieval times. Corpse roads often followed a direct and sometimes the shortest path to the designated churchyard. This was not just for convenience but also held spiritual importance. In medieval Christian Europe, it was important for many communities to bury their dead in consecrated ground, and corpse roads facilitated this when local burial was not an option. Christian rites. These paths, emerging during a time when Christian rites and rituals were integral to daily life, were born out of a necessity dictated by religious practices and geographical challenges. In medieval times, particularly in remote rural areas, local settlements often lacked their own church or consecrated burial grounds. Consequently, the dead had to be transported to the mother church or to the nearest parish with burial rites, sometimes located several miles away. This requirement led to the establishment of specific routes, later known as corpse roads, to facilitate the transportation of the deceased for Christian burials. These paths were not arbitrarily chosen but were often the most direct route to the designated churchyards. Wayside crosses, what exactly are they? The significance of ensuring a proper burial in consecrated ground cannot be understated in the context of medieval Christian beliefs. It was widely held that a consecrated burial was essential for the salvation of the soul, a belief that underscored the importance of these routes. Furthermore, the establishment of corpse roads was also influenced by the legal and ecclesiastical frameworks of the time. The church held significant sway over the lives of people, and burial rites were strictly governed by ecclesiastical laws. In addition, the churches that received the dead often claimed burial fees, which added an economic dimension to the use of these routes. In some regions, the topography played a crucial role in the layout of these roads. Corpse roads often traversed challenging landscapes, winding through rugged moorlands, dense woodlands, and across streams and rivers. The journey along these roads was not only a physical undertaking but also a spiritual passage, marking the final journey of the deceased from the mortal world to the spiritual realm. The routes and their characteristics. The primary aim was to create the shortest and most efficient route from the outlying villages to the parish church with consecrated burial grounds. This efficiency was not only a matter of convenience but also held spiritual significance, as it was believed that the dead should be laid to rest as soon as possible. Corpse roads typically cut across the countryside, avoiding inhabited areas and often following natural features of the landscape. They crossed fields, moorlands, and woods, went over hills, and forded rivers or streams. Eel houses, what exactly are they? In many cases, these paths were rugged and unpaved, reflecting the rural and undeveloped nature of the landscape in which they were situated. Their often remote and challenging terrain contributed to the sense of solemnity and isolation associated with the journey to a final resting place. Coffin bridges. Distinctive features often marked these routes. Stiles and gates were common, allowing the passage of funeral processions but preventing livestock from straying along these paths. In some areas, especially where paths crossed watercourses, specific bridges known as coffin bridges were built. These bridges were sometimes constructed with flat stones to allow for a rest during the journey, reflecting the physical challenges of transporting a coffin over long distances. The narrowness of the paths was another characteristic feature. They were often just wide enough for the pallbearers to walk in pairs, carrying the coffin. This narrowness was partly practical, as wider roads were more difficult to maintain, but it also had symbolic significance. The tight, enclosed nature of these paths was thought to prevent the spirit of the deceased from wandering away from the route to the consecrated ground. Lichgate, what are these medieval icons? In addition to their practical function, corpse roads were imbued with spiritual and supernatural connotations. Folklore and local legends often grew around these routes, with stories of ghostly apparitions and eerie phenomena. Such tales reflected the community's perceptions of death and the afterlife and added a layer of mythic significance to these already solemn paths. Religious and spiritual significance. In medieval Christian understanding, the journey of the deceased from the place of death to the consecrated ground was of paramount importance. It was believed that burial in hallowed ground was essential for the soul's salvation and peaceful rest. Corpse roads, therefore, were viewed as sacred paths, facilitating this final, crucial journey. The act of transporting the body along these routes was seen as an act of piety, a final service to the departed, ensuring their passage to the afterlife was in accordance with Christian rites. The physical journey along a corpse road was often mirrored by prayers and rituals. Funeral processions were solemn affairs, with the community joining in prayer and song, invoking divine guidance and support for the departed soul. This communal aspect of the journey reinforced the sense of shared belief and collective responsibility for the spiritual well-being of community members, even in death. Furthermore, corpse roads were often shrouded in local superstitions and folklore, adding another layer to their spiritual significance. It was commonly believed that these paths were trodden not just by the living but also by the spirits of the dead. Tales of ghostly figures and unexplained occurrences along these routes were prevalent, reflecting the medieval mindset where the boundaries between the physical and spiritual worlds were blurred. These beliefs reinforced the aura of sanctity and mystery surrounding corpse roads, making them an integral part of the local spiritual landscape. In some communities, specific rituals and customs developed around corpse roads. These might include the carrying of the coffin in a certain way, stopping at particular points along the route to pray, or even the belief that the route should never be walked upon for any non-funerary purpose, to avoid disturbing the resting spirits. The decline of corpse roads, with changes in burial practices and the establishment of more local graveyards, gradually diminished their religious and spiritual roles. However, the traces of these paths in the landscape and in local legends continue to bear witness to their once vital role in the religious life of medieval Europe. Legal and social aspects. The legal and social aspects of corpse roads during the medieval period were significant, reflecting the interplay between community practices, religious obligations, and the legal framework of the time. These pathways, while primarily serving a religious function, were also embedded within the social and legal structures of the communities they connected. Milestones have been here since the Roman times. Legally, the establishment and use of corpse roads were often governed by church law and local customs. The church played a central role in medieval life, and its regulations had a profound impact on social practices, including burial rites. In many areas, the right to bury the dead and conduct funeral services was held by specific mother churches or main parish churches, which necessitated the use of corpse roads to transport the deceased from outlying areas. These churches often levied fees for burials, which were a source of income and a matter of legal entitlement. The maintenance of corpse roads, therefore, became a matter of both religious duty and legal necessity, ensuring that parishioners had access to these essential services. Socially, corpse roads were more than just routes for funerals, they were integral to the fabric of community life. The journey along a corpse road for a funeral was a communal affair, with neighbors and relatives often accompanying the coffin. This practice reinforced community bonds and shared experiences of life, death, and faith. It also underscored the collective responsibility within the community for upholding religious practices and providing mutual support in times of bereavement. What is a medieval burgage plot? In some regions, the routes of corpse roads were closely tied to social hierarchies and land ownership. Landowners and local gentry might have their own designated burial places, often within the church itself, while the common people used the churchyard. The corpse roads leading to these burial sites thus mirrored the social stratifications of the time. The legal and social importance of corpse roads also extended to their role in land rights and access. These paths were often established along traditional routes that might predate the legal frameworks imposed by church and state. In some cases, the right-of-way along a corpse road could become a contentious issue, intersecting with disputes over land ownership and usage rights. Corpse road superstitions. These routes also often featured in local superstitions. In some communities, it was believed that walking along a corpse road at certain times, such as at night or on specific days, could result in encounters with the supernatural. There were also beliefs that disturbing these paths, whether by obstructing them or using them for non-funerary purposes, could bring misfortune or invoke the wrath of the spirits.
Garantani, till the next video.